I call on Professor Julie McLeod, Pro-Vice-Chancellor Research Capability, to introduce Professor Brendan Crabb, who has kindly agreed to deliver the occasional address.
Our guest speaker this morning is an authority on one of the world's most problematic diseases, malaria. Professor Brendan Crabb is an infectious disease researcher whose research group develops and exploits genetic approaches to better understand malaria parasite biology. The main purpose of his group's research is to help prioritise vaccine and drug targets. Early in his career, Professor Crabb graduated with a Bachelor of Science with honours in microbiology at the University of Melbourne, and then with a PhD in virology, also at Melbourne. Professor Crabb's interests include addressing barriers to maternal, newborn and child health in the developing world. Professor Crabb has played critical roles in transformative government policy and funding initiatives, including in the generation of the $20 billion Medical Research Future Fund. Since 2008, he has been Director and CEO of the Burnet Institute for Medical Research and Public Health. It is a pleasure to invite him to speak today. Please welcome Professor Brendan Crabb.
Well, it is indeed a very great honour for me to speak to you today. A day that is certainly one to celebrate, to recognise the great personal achievement of you all getting to this point. A PhD is very special, and you should be rightly enormously proud of yourselves. I think what makes today a little bit, but perhaps a lot more special, is that it's a day to be shared with those who have taken the journey with you and who in many instances can rightly take at least some, perhaps a lot of the credit for your success. So I'd like to begin by sincerely congratulating everybody here in the warmest possible way I can. And in doing so, I'd like to just share a few thoughts, small things that I've come to regard as important to making the biggest difference one can in life. And the Chancellor has already alluded to a few of those. So there'll be, I think, it suggests they might be not just my thoughts, but particularly important lessons. The first, and I think the only thing to remember from today, if it needs underscoring, is the importance of lifelong learning. I strongly encourage you to not see today as the end of your learning, far from it. Lifelong learning promotes humility and wisdom. Humility promotes further receptiveness to knowledge, and wisdom fosters better decisions. Lifelong learning is characterised by listening more than talking. An extra special message to all the men out here. We're not as good at listening as women. It's characterised by being interested in everyone, again to the Chancellor's point. Embrace the richness that comes from diversity. From it comes a keen sense of self-awareness and an awareness of the strengths of others. This openness to knowledge and ideas from people in different circumstances to you is a key, perhaps the key, to a successful working life. It is also, in my view, the most important aspect of leadership. And you're all, in one form or another, from this day forward, if you weren't already, leaders. Good leaders, including academics, ask and listen more than they answer and tell. The second point I'd like to refer to is the value of the generic skills that the Chancellor referred to, those of critical thinking, of being able to process and interpret large amounts of information, of communicating effectively, and perhaps most especially of valuing the consensus of experts, more, in fact, than your own instinct. These generic skills are why there are a wide range of job opportunities out there for you, more and more as time goes on, ones that differ from the specifics of whatever it is you're now expert in. There are far more options available to you than academia, as good as an option as that is. But perhaps there's something more important about generic skills that you have. Certainly important ones for as far as society is concerned. They are a powerful antidote to the interesting times that we are living in, where the prevailing view on some issues may be very different to what the best available evidence actually says. One example that is close to my heart in the nature of the work I do is the myth, effectively, of the state of humanity itself. Clearly, there is much pessimism in this regard out there in the wider world, but the data says something very different. Measures of life expectancy, of child mortality, of poverty, particularly extreme poverty, of conflict, and of population growth all show substantial improvement and have done for each of the last 40 years or more. In fact, the stabilising population growth is driven by another myth-busting fact. Saving lives leads to fewer people. This is because keeping kids alive, through vaccination for example, drives lower fertility rates. Women have less children, much less children now than they used to, because they have confidence that those they do have will survive. This is true to a different degree, but is still true in the developing and developed world. Now, of course, there are major headwinds for humanity, one very big one in the form of rapid global warming. But it is a surprise for many to learn that, in a general sense at least, there's never been a better time to be born, and certainly never been a better time to graduate as you are today. My point here is just to highlight how the facts, even huge ones like this, sometimes differ to the prevailing view. The community needs people with your dispassionate analytical skills to identify and communicate the best available evidence in any particular area, because it can be hard to find this in the fast news cycle, social media orientated, advertising dominated, and sadly easily exploited world in which we live. So I leave with this. The generic skills you have are not just highly portable in a way that will open many more doors for you than you can imagine. You are desperately needed by a wider national and global community to help tell the difference between the facts, as determined by the experts, and the fiction that they so often receive. So a huge and heartfelt congratulations once again, and thank you for the honour of speaking to you all on what is a memorable day in each of your lives. Thank you.